If you asked any group of traders what was perhaps the single hardest thing to do in trading, they would all pretty much agree that near the top of the list is staying in a trend. Getting in is the easy part, but then it's holding a position through the ups and downs which are inevitably part of price action, whatever the time frame. And that's the reason we developed the trend monitor. Now, the quantum trend monitor takes a more considered view of the price action, and it appears at the bottom of the screen as a solid band of color. And in fact, the quantum trend monitor is two indicators in one. First, we have the solid band of color, which is either bright red or bright blue, or in the transitional phases of dark blue and dark red. And overlying that, we have the yellow line, which oscillates above and below the dotted line of the midpoint. Now, this is how the indicator normally will appear on your chart, but for the purposes of this video, I've actually expanded them up, zoomed in if you like, on 4 time frames so that we can see the relationship between the trend monitor and the price action in more detail. So let's move over and look at 4 time frames together. And here we're looking at the dollar CAD. We have a 5-minute at the bottom left, a 15-minute bottom right, a 30-minute top right, and then the hourly chart to the top left. And the trend monitor has been developed to smooth out the bumps in the road, if you like. It takes a more considered approach towards looking at the trend as it develops. If you've seen the earlier video on the trends indicator, there you will have seen how closely the trend dots are related to the price action and really give you a close-up view of the development of the trend as it's happening and forecasting out given the upwards or downwards pressure on the price action. Now, the trend monitor is a perfect complement to the trends indicator. As I say, it takes a more considered view of the trend and will help you to stay in through all those minor pullbacks and reversals which are inevitably part of trading life. You can see at the bottom on the 5-minute chart for the dollar CAD, the trend monitor here, we've had an uptrend in bullish. And as I say, this is zoomed out, so hence the reason that the solid bar actually has spaces. But other than that, that's the only reason it appears in this format. We've had a little uptrend there in bright blue, so the trend monitor is helping to keep us in. Then we've moved to a transitional phase. The color of the trend monitor has changed to dark blue. Then it's moved to dark red on the next 3, and then we've moved into bright red. In other words, we've moved fully from what was a bullish trend into a transitional phase and ultimately through into a bearish phase. We've also had a pause point there. We've moved into the dark red for a couple of sessions, and then the bearish trend has picked up again and we've moved back to bright red. So in other words, if we were trading that to the short side on the 5-minute chart, the trend monitor is simply helping us to stay in the trend. We had a minor transition. The color changed from bright red to dark red, but we never had a transition through to either dark blue or even into bright blue. So even in that minor rally, the trend monitor has kept us in, and this is the beauty of the trend monitor. It's smoothing out the bumps in the road, the reversals, the pullbacks, if you like. And it's giving a considered opinion and a considered view on the price action over the longer term. And when I say longer term, in relation to the time frame that you're considering. So it's like a damper, if you like. It's like a shock absorber. It's taking out those minor shocks like the shock absorber on your car, just smoothing your path as the price action moves forward. Now let's look at the 15-minute, and this is just a great way to use the trend monitor in multiple time frames. On the 15-minute, what do we have? We can see here, we've had a nice uptrend. The trend monitor has remained bright blue for quite a period. Then it's transitioned to darker blue. The darker blue is telling us that the trend is possibly coming to an end. It does not automatically mean that it will transition through to bearish. It has on this occasion, but it's not always the case. And there you can see we transition through to dark red and ultimately through to bright red. So the transition from bullish to bearish is complete. And what the slower time frame is doing, it is reflecting the ripple effect from your 5-minute chart. And the analogy here is like the ripples on a pond. If there is a true change in trend, then that will ultimately ripple through from your fast chart into your medium speed charts and ultimately through to your slowest time frame of all. Here we have 4. You might feel more comfortable with 3, but it's a great way to use the trend monitor, and indeed all trading is based on a multi-time frame approach. But the trend monitor gives you that view, it gives you that perspective as the change in trend, if it is a true change in trend, ripples across the time frames, and this is an excellent example. So there we are on the 15-minute. We've actually transitioned through into a bearish phase towards the end of this session. Moving up to the 30-minute chart, what do we see here? Well, as of yet, on the slower time frames, this bearish move has not yet developed. Now, if we scrolled through for a couple of bars further forward, this was at the end of a week, so we haven't had further price action yet. But ultimately, if this is a true change in trend, it will be reflected in the trend monitor. There, on the 30-minute chart, we've had a bearish phase. We moved into transition, a brief transition from dark red to dark blue, and ultimately through into the bullish phase, which extended for some period. But note also, in the minor pullbacks there, we've had no change in that color as of yet, either earlier on or indeed the session that we're now running towards the end of. And finally, up to the hourly chart. Again, you can see there we've had various phases of price action. From the left, we've had a nice bearish phase. Then we moved into a short transitional phase, bullish. And then we actually flipped straight back to bearish. From that was a move on the trend monitor from bright blue to bright red. We had no transitional phase at that point. And then we had a further transitional phase towards the end, where we moved from bearish, bright red, into a bright blue. We had no dark red on that occasion, so just simply straight through into bright blue and into our next bullish phase of price action with the bright blue. So that's the trend monitor. It has this ability to smooth out the road for you, to smooth out the imperfections, to take away the minor reversals, to absorb them into the price action, and to give you a considered view of the trend as it builds. And that's why we call it the trend monitor. That's exactly what it's doing. It's monitoring the trend all the time for you. Now, I mentioned at the start of the video that the trend monitor is actually 2 indicators in one. So let's take a look at that on a separate chart. And here we are. Again, this is a zoomed in view. So the trend monitor itself is slightly expanded to give you a better view of the price action. And as you can see, overlying the trend monitor is this yellow line, which is the second aspect of the quantum trend monitor. As I say, it's 2 indicators in one. We have the colored bar below, and we have this yellow line, which is giving us a perspective on the extent of the trend as it develops. As you'll see, as the trend moves above the midpoint, the little dotted line, the white dotted line, we're moving into a bullish phase. And it will also give you a perspective on the extent of a trend, whether it's a minor trend or whether it's developing into a major trend, based on the extent of this line from the midpoint. So it's just helping to give you some perspective, some depth, if you like, on how far this trend has moved or is likely to move given the extent of any previous moves for that particular time frame and that particular instrument. And finally, just to round off, if you see the trends indicator video, then you'll understand how the trends indicator works very close to the market. And in this video, I hope I've given you a flavor of how the trend monitor takes a more considered view. So using the two indicators in parallel is a great way to give you a heads up on the trend, both from a close-up perspective and also from a longer-term point of view. They are complementary, they are freestanding in their own right, but used together they are a fantastic combination, giving you those two views, if you like, the close-up view and the slightly more considered view, to help you give a perspective on the trend and to help you achieve the one thing which is so hard in trading, which is to stay in a trend once you've taken a position in the market. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.